I'm Sachin Singh, and we are bringing you the next round of the Scarlet Chess Super League. Round one has already started today. It's a 3-round Swiss tournament. We had two arenas before, where we were looking at different people coming in, and we took the top three, and now we have 6 people playing. One of them couldn't make it due to an emergency, so we have 5 people playing in for a Swiss tournament today. The top 4 basically go to the next round, and we will have an over the board matchup for that one sometime in March. So let's get started. We have 2 games already on, so let's take a look at it. This one is being played between Josh and Craig, and let's look at the openings really quickly. So we start with knight f3, g6, g3, bishop g7, bishop g2, knight f6, castle kingside, fairly symmetrical, fairly even, d4, d5, and b3. c6 was played, and bishop b2. So fairly equal game. Nothing very interesting happening right now. There's 15 minutes on the clock, so for almost both the players, around 14 and a half minutes for both of them. So it looks like both of them are actually in their prep part right now, or fairly comfortable with the position. So I think this is probably a first long think by Craig. And let's go to the next one, which is also interesting. Hold on, let's see if I can actually pull this out. This helps me to take note of what is going on and switch between the games really quickly. So this game has become wild really quickly, but let's take a look at it. So we have Zachariah playing white and Clint playing black. Starting with d4, b6, c4, bishop b7, knight c3, e6, e4, bishop b4, actually threatening this. So if bishop takes, so if white, let's say, passes a move or plays something like knight f3, then bishop takes c3, b takes c3, bishop takes e4, wins a pawn. So bishop b3 was played, and then f5, attacking the center, queen e2, defending the pawn. Interesting stuff again. The idea here is if e takes f5, bishop takes g2, loses the rook. So there are some weird tactics definitely to take a look at, which is why I think queen e2 was played. And I think there has been development. There has been a little development since we last saw this. So knight b d7 was played. So it might feel like this bishop is actually locked in here, but this bishop usually comes out once the little trades happen here, or this knight chooses to like retreat and then comes out like this. Or if h6, h6, and the knight can read out itself to somewhere here, or in fact like go out this way, or even play e5, have a couple of exchanges after queen, so e5, a couple of exchanges after queen c7 has been played. So there's multiple ways of getting this bishop out late in the game. So this bishop is definitely not dead. The hope is not lost for this bishop as of yet. c4, again, attacking the center, e6 defending it, and rook e1 just playing calm, collected moves from both the sides. Once e4 is played, I think we will see a couple of exchanges on either side. But I think there should be a couple of moves before we actually look or see e4. So something like knight bd2 or knight c3 might be an option. And we can also see some sort of knight e5 ideas for white, plonking the knight on a really nice square. And very similar ideas for black, actually trying to play knight e4, given that there is same ideas for white to do. So there's been a couple of moves again here. After queen e2, black has played knight f6. Seems to be fairly equal, and f3 has been played defending this. But now suddenly this knight doesn't have any moves to go towards the center. So I assume white is trying to play bishop d2 and castle kingside, seemingly, and then launch a huge kingside attack. So there's multiple ideas again here. One of them is to play this really nice idea of kingside attacks. Well, let's remove evaluation lines for now. We'll leave the evaluation out, but I don't really want the lines for now. We'll look at it in a little bit. All right. I think we also need to change a couple of things in the stream. Okay, and right, so okay, so we've gotten the stream updated. Let's go. So that was done. That was important. And then I can also, I think, add stats just in case to know how's it going on. It seems to be really nice. Let's get back to the game. So here, hold on, a couple of moves have been made. We last saw it till rook e1 and then d takes c4 was played. Actually, let's put it here. There's no point. So rook e1, d takes c4 was played. So I was actually wrong. We did see a couple of exchanges: d takes c4, b takes c4, and knight b6, queen c2, and this. Now the problem with this is now the bishop is actually running into its own pawn, and even from this side it will take a couple of moves for the bishop to actually get out. Similarly, this e5 pushes does not seem possible after the knight has moved to b6, because this pawn, this knight, and also this bishop behind the pawn is controlling the square. So this bishop on c8 was really hopeless, and now it's even more hopeless because it's running into two of its own pawns. It almost has no scope whatsoever to get out anytime. In fact, I think if black plays c5 at any point, I would actually go a4, giving up a rook and a pawn for two of these minor pieces, because then suddenly black might have an outside passer, but I have two more minor pieces and I can definitely control a lot more things. And as we all know, knights are definitely way more trickier than a rook, but two rooks are definitely stronger. So there's pros and cons for both, but I would probably have given up a rook and a pawn for these two minor pieces if I could, which also gives me control of the center anyway. So rook a8 has been played after a think of around 29 seconds by black. And the question now is, what exactly does black have, white has in play here? So I think maybe e4 is some kind of an option that yeah, I think e4 is some kind of an option that black can play. Let's go back to the other game and let's check it out. So after f3, not a lot has been played. Black has gone into deep think. And I think it's been, so the last three moves, as we can see, players have been thinking around 2 minutes, a minute 35, a minute 25. And this has been a longer think, so around 3-ish minutes now. Very interesting, definitely. So let's see what black comes up with. And black has played after a 4.5 minute think in a 15-minute game. F takes e4. I assume f takes e4 is an idea. So let's look at it. F takes e4, f takes e4, right? Bishop takes e4, probably knight takes e4. Yeah, not possible, right? F takes e4, bishop takes e4, knight takes e4. Yeah, because this knight is pinned. So we have two attackers and two defenders. So we take back here, and if takes back, what is the idea that white can play? That's the question. Is there something else that white can force here? let's now look at the line. So f takes e4 is one idea, and then f takes e4, and if black has to castle there, but what if it takes back? Yeah, but there's two defenders, right? So yeah. F takes e4, knight takes e4, knight, bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, takes. It's actually bad. So f takes e4, castles kingside, I think. Sorry, f takes e4 and castles kingside is the idea, yeah. So that can be something, because anytime you take back, you lose a piece for a pawn. So that's definitely not something that black wants to do. I might also expect something like c5 or d5 coming our way. Not very optimistic about knight c6 as of yet. And not a long think, almost a minute think, but white here, and white just captures back and asks questions to the black position that you spent 4.5 minutes thinking about a little capture, which is normal, but it doesn't lead to any tactical difficulties for white. So what exactly do those 4-minute think, does that 4-minute think represent? Let's go back to this. The position has changed quite a bit after queen c2. This is where we actually watched it, queen c2. I know we watched it a little bit later till rook a8, and two moves have been played. So e4 has been played, and then knight e8 has been played. I think knight e8 has been played preparing f5. Black really wants to open the position up, and once takes happen, probably wants to play this. White can maybe try this, because again this square is still, no, that square is gone then. But this is an interesting move. Bishop a3 has been played, threatening the rook. Knight d6 almost necessary, but then if knight d6, there is this e5. So there is this c5 move that I think that can be played. But what to do from there? I think black just has to accept the loss of an exchange here. I don't see tactical defenses or any defense at this point. And yes, the engine actually says knight c8 is the best move, just accepting that this rook is lost. And Stockfish doesn't even want to take it back. Stockfish just says, I'm going to make your bishop a little bit more useless after I put like my pawn on e5. And it's running into a chain of pawns, which are heavily defended. And once I move my knight, I'll also put like f4, and then I'll ask you the question, what exactly is your bishop doing here? Sitting on g7, defending the king, probably, and being like a big pawn, pretty much, running into just a chain of pawns and doing nothing. Let's go back. A couple of things have happened really very quickly after f takes e4, knight takes e4, bishop, and queen h4 has been played, and here g3 was played, and queen takes e4 just loses this rook whatsoever. Here the defense, so we have to find a defense here for white, and I think king d8 was the idea, because it unpins this knight very interestingly, and also it unpins, and white took 10 seconds to play this, and it unpins this knight, but it also allows, this defense, so there's no pin on this knight here anymore. Hold on, can I have a better color? I don't know how do I get red, but anyway, I'm getting every different variation, but not just red. Anyway, so let's assume that this knight is not pinned anymore then. Interesting. Right click. Okay, so here it's not pinned anymore, and then once you play king d8, it's defended twice, and if it takes back here, if it takes here, you actually take here. So that was the variation that white had to see. But after king g3, queen takes e4, bishop exchanges, after a couple of exchanges, white is clearly a rook down, and I think this is resignable already. So black has resigned. White has resigned. Black wins, takes this one home. Couple of moves have been made again here. e4, knight e8, bishop a3, e5 has been played by black himself, and takes back with the king. And after this, again, this bishop is running into its own pawn. And let's remove the lines. And again, asking the question to black's position. What exactly do you have in store for, or to show for the last exchange? After d5, black is still contemplating the next move. Both the players are comfortable with time. 8.5 minutes for black, 10 minutes for white. Seems pretty okay. And now we have these standings already. And once this round ends, we'll go to the next round. I assume that's how the things are going. So we can let go of this, and we can analyze this game a little bit more deeply. So let's try to look at moves for white and black, actually, both of them. Also, let me pull Twitch chat up if I can. Yep, we have the chat. And okay, I really hope if I could. Right, so nothing going amazing going in the chat right now. But let's see. So we have the question now is, how does white recapture? Does white want massive exchanges and basically just exchange the queen? Or is there an idea? Because I think you can almost guarantee an exchange. Almost, not very sure, unless queen goes to b8. So you can guarantee an exchange after, almost guarantee an exchange after, takes. If the queen goes here, you can put your queen on c5, effectively exchanging the queen. But then also this bishop is running it into its own pawn, so this bishop has to be exchanged at some point. So now the question basically becomes, do we want to take with the e pawn or the d pawn? Or the c pawn. So which one is better? This is also an important question to. It's also important to ask, because if c takes d5, black has 2 pawns on the outside, and let's say if white blunders an exchange back, these 2 pawns will be very strong in the king pawn ending. But again, if blunder is a big question. So what exactly is going to happen here is still unpredictable, but I would assume you should take towards the center again, and then at some point move this knight and have this really strong pawn chain, basically and effectively cutting both the bishops off from black's game, and also here offering a queen exchange. So unless black plays really passively and plays queen b8, giving white's queen free reign in the center, I think this game should be fairly easy to win from here, with both the players being really close. Excuse me, in time, with around half a minute between each, and both the players at around 7.5 in 8 minutes. f5 has been played, and seems that the engine doesn't like it a lot. But let's turn off the evaluation also, and let's see how we can understand this position without engine or without lines. So at this point, let's count the material first. So we've got 3 and 3 6 pawns, and we've got 3 and 3 6 pawns. We've got 4 minor pieces, 3 here, so a rook each and an exchange. And white is an exchange up, plus has a protected passer. Depending on how white responds to this one, might just be a passer and not a protected passer anymore. Black's idea with the move f5 is that, let's say if you play something of this sort, or you move the knight away or something. After takes, if you take back with the knight, this is then defended, and if you take back with the bishop, your bishop is basically protecting a smaller piece and is like tied to this diagonal. So this is what black is trying to imply here. Yep, the new round hasn't started as of yet, but let's see. Well, interestingly enough, a draw was offered, which was declined. So that is an interesting observation too, in terms of the position as the evaluation of the position, how black sees it, or it might be just a Hail Mary at this point, that what if white is tired enough playing 10 minutes of chess or 20 minutes of chess at this point, and actually wants a draw at the end with this. An important decision for white to make as to what next move to make. There's multiple ideas again here. How do you keep this pawn protected past it? So is there even a way of doing it? And also, if black takes back, is this pawn becoming loose in the near future? And am I actually trying to attack that? Another idea can be to play knight c4, trying to like double attack it and force another exchange. So at this point, I think you can just play this. If takes, you can go here, threatening this pawn and this pawn both, and you will recover one of these back no matter what. And knight c4 has been played. I would predict black to play f takes e4. So my variation would probably go f takes e4, knight here, then this pawn push, takes back, and then maybe major exchanges here. So at least a pawn exchange here, and then this knight comes back somewhat here. Not sure though. Can also come back. Cannot come back there, since the knight has already taken back. So we never know which place this knight goes to. The position looks really hopeless for black right now. Exchange down and almost no play whatsoever. So there's no counter attack for black yet. Difficult situation. All right, I think actually I want to analyze this game a little bit more. So g3 was a mistake. So here I think an idea was to go here, right? And let's actually look at the lines. So white had to really find this not for g6, but had to find king g1 or king f1. Both of them are winning, but king d1 actually is better, just because it moves away from this nasty threat of castling, castling and then giving a check to white, because even then you can play knight f3 and you're okay, or you can claim that you're okay. You also attack the queen, but almost worthlessly because your knight is still pinned. So you have to play this another move, which is okay, but then you're also trapping your rook almost on h1. So you have to, if you play king f1, you might have to play h4, h5 to bring out the rook this way. Anyway, so king d1 had to be found, and after king d1, Engine says knight c6. I would probably think there would be exchanges here just to test the stuff out. But again, the tactical idea that I do not want anyone to miss is that if bishop takes c3, you have to take bishop takes b7 first, and only then. And if queen d7, I think you can just put the bishop in the middle. It works, and then you can also play just king c2. The Engine seems to like king c2 much better, also because it I think it saves this pawn from being lost. So this king c2, and then black has to retreat obviously, And here you can start attacking the queen. I would have probably gone and given a check or have taken the rook. Any of them work. But I think knight f3 or bishop takes a8, both of them work. But the important point was to see king d1, which is unpinning the knight. And then go ahead with defending the bishop. And then if black tries to play a little bit more tactically, you have to take, and you basically win the rook. That was missed by white, and white was also almost in no hurry at this point with 11 minutes on the clock. I think the time should have been used. It's all right. After g3 takes, and suddenly the tables have turned, because now this rook is actually the one being captured. And after exchanges on e2, all hope is lost, because even though this rook is like too far off, it requires only 2 moves. So if the rook moves away, black has free reign, and if you take back, no hope against a single rook. And plus, if you move away, knight c6, castle kingside, these 2 rooks are connected, and very soon black will double up after playing rook f6, rook d, f8. Just all hell breaks loose really quick. So white just chose to resign at this point, and I think it's very given that the position was somewhat resignable. Let's go back after knight c4, f takes c4 was played, and a couple of exchanges were seen. Interesting. I was not expecting this exchange, but I think this knight takes b6 is definitely much better. Because if you take back here, you're doubling your pawns, and you're letting off almost any advantage or any hope that you have left in the position. So after e takes f3, you're threatening this. But here there's a Zwischenzug or an intermezzo, which is that you play an in-between move, giving a check to black's king, and you're also capturing a piece. So when black captures the knight in return, you can very safely capture the pawn in f3, and you're a clean exchange up with a passed pawn, and black ended up losing another pawn and almost making no progress. 4.5 minutes on the clock for both the players with a 10-second increment. Should be very hard, and white really has to make efforts to lose from here. This is a passed pawn. You definitely can attack any of these pawns. Beware of putting the rooks on any of these squares because of this long range laser. Bishop d4. Interesting idea. Not sure what it does, but if I was white, I would probably just play rook c8 and ask black this question: how do you intend to defend this knight? Because if you play this, I'll just take, and I'll basically be an exchange up, and then you almost have nothing. So at least one rook was able to defend a couple of pawns on the 7th rank. Once that's exchanged, not a lot is left for black to do. And after rook takes e7, king takes e7, I think we can safely white can rook e6. Interesting. White showing almost no hurry in trying to exchange pieces. And I think very soon king f7, king f2 will come, or even bishop e4, and then f4 can be seen. So this pawn is not undefended actually, because once you take back, I take the knight. And if knight here, there's this check defending the bishop. And definitely now rook takes h7, easy move, can be played. And after exchanges on here, white is an exchange and a pawn up. But here's white to move, and let's see what white actually gets on from here. Rook takes h7, and that's 2 pawns. Black really needs to keep the pieces here. So moving the knight away, actually not into the bishop. So somewhere here should be an idea, or not moving the knight, because you don't have to exchange pieces. keeping the piece on the board is an idea. Moving the bishop off the diagonal is also not good because f4 is then imminent. So the bishop has to stay, also protect this pawn on a7. So the bishop needs to stay on this diagonal no matter what. Let's look at a plan for white. I was right. I would probably start playing. I would leave this bishop here and I would start playing h4, h5. Okay, so the knight moves, trying to come to c3 maybe? Or there's another idea that the bishop might go back and the knight might come here, this way. Attacking a couple of things. Let's see. I think at this point we should see handshakes really soon. Before the next round starts, I think I'll actually take a Ricola for my throat. Bishop d5 on the board. Knight c3, bishop b. Was thinking bishop b3, but bishop c4 has been played. Bishop b3 actually gives you this nice buffer that even if any of them are actually threatened, you can still play this. And now I think rook f7, easy move. Defending this twice. Oh, but there's traps. So if you take, so here I would like to show that if you take here, there's this check coming in, and then when you move the king, you can take on here twice, and you have your bishop up basically. So you lose a rook and pawn for two minor pieces, but you have a bishop and an extra pawn on the king side, and it should be an easy win after that. So you put the pawn on a4, put the bishop here, exchange, and then you just have an extra pawn. You move your king over, take this pawn, and it's on the same square, so no matter if the king even reaches, the bishop can always kick the king out. It would have been an easy win, but knight d6 was played, and no checks coming in. So, is h4 imminent? That's the question. Finesse, h4. And after g takes h4, rook takes h4, I think, with two protected passers and an exchange. Very hard. The valuation I think should be around +8. It's +6. Okay, not that high. I think I overestimated. Bishop b6, taking away any ideas of rook takes d4, king takes d4, and then playing the inferior bishop versus knight game. King f3, centralizing the king. Also trying to take away squares from the knight. So another idea that I would like to show you, if you're new to chess or if you're watching it for entertainment, is that if and when actually a bishop and knight are away from each other in such a fashion where there are two squares between the bishop and the knight, the bishop almost always dominates the knight. So to give you an example, all these squares are basically where the knight can go to. So apart from this, because it's protected by the king, this knight cannot move to any of these squares. So that's another idea or concept that you want to see. So another pattern, if you want to remember, is that if the bishop and the knight are two squares away from each other and also on the same file or the rank, similarly if the bishop was around here, so let's do this in a different color. If the bishop was here, all these, so these squares would be the ones which would be dominated by the bishop. And similarly, if the bishop was around here, these were the four squares. So that's how this concept works. Anyway, so knight f7, check, king goes away, and very interestingly, you see how white is trying to put his king or pieces almost on the light squares all the time, because then the bishop has nothing to attack and stays on the basically the bishop is just firing guns into the air, like thin air. There's nothing to attack when there's no pieces on black squares. Knight g5, rook c4, at h3 and f4. So we see f4 finally after a long time, and I assume at this point, after you play something like king f3, you can actually play rook c6. In fact, if I had the move, I would play rook c6, takes, and then play king f3, because this knight suddenly cannot leave. There's no outs for this knight, and you have to play rook c6 here. Rook c6 wins on the spot. I mean, it's been winning since a long time, but rook c6 is just utterly brutal. Rook c6, king moves, you take, and you take this knight, and you have a comfortable winning advantage. And after it takes back, there's another check, and you take back with the king. There's no coming back from this. You will lose the last pawn even very quickly, and one last hurrah or one last ditch effort by Craig, offering a draw in an utterly lost position. Black resigns. The first round is over. Clint and Josh taking the wins. On to the next round. Have the two rounds coming up. Clint is going to play Craig. Lucas is going to play Josh. Let's take a look at Clint. Clint starts with e4. Let's turn off the lines again. No evaluation bar for us, as always. Let's look at the second game. So it is a Caro-Kann. Lucas playing Josh. Lucas white, Josh black. e4, c6, d4. And e5, c5, the advanced variation of Caro-Kann. c3, knight c6, knight f3. This is turning into some sort of a French. If there was e6, and then you would call this bishop on c8 running into its own pawn chain of the French bishop. But after bishop g5, bishop e3, but the players probably in their prep with more time than they started with at move number 6. After bishop e3, it seems to be the first, I think, of the game. I do not know this opening, but I would think one of these lines is possible. Might also be an option to take on f3. I will see what black plays. Let's go back to the other game, and after e4, e6, French, d3, d5, knight d2, d4, and g3. Clint going for his King's Indian attack, no matter what the opponent plays. And after e5, black seems to have some kind of space advantage. The question is, what happens to moves like c3 and f4? And is that bad? I'd assume f4 is probably bad because f4, f takes e4, g takes e4, and there's this queen h4 ideas. But playing very solidly with bishop g2, probably will play knight f3, castle kingside, or we'll actually play knight e2 and play f4 and castle kingside. So knight e4, castle kingside, and then f4. So one of these ideas definitely possible. c5 has been played, bolstering this pawn on d4 and not allowing any chance to actually attack. I would think this is an idea, but why to actually try things that would not, like, may or may not work? Knight f3 or knight e2 and castle kingside is just very simple to be played here. Let's go back and see if there's something happening in the other game. Both the players actually, oh, this game has gone really quick. Let's stick to this. So knight f3 was played and we were here, and there were exchanges in the middle. e6 was played, knight c3, queen b6, queen b3, takes, bishop b4, king c2, knight e7, bishop b5. Now first thing for black. White still really ready, and probably in their own prep with actually real nice position. So white has these double pawns, black doesn't. But if black castles here, I mean, it's putting the king towards an outside. Outside this position, since the queens are already off the board, there's no point to castle here. In fact, I would play something like king d7 or king e7, since the knight just moved from e7. So one of those moves again. And now rook a4, attacking this bishop and effectively asking the question, where exactly do you want to put this bishop? Do you want to exchange and give me back my structure, or do you want to play something like bishop e7? a5 has been played by black. Interesting move again, and I would not be surprised to see something like this. Rook here, but okay. So, well, that was actually a cheap tactical idea, and if like black plays king e7, nothing's actually gonna come out of this rook ha1 move. So rook g1, I think definitely a better idea. Trying to ask this question to black, that if you take and I take back with the king or the pawn, are you willing to play g6 to defend this, or will you move your rook to g8? So good questions, but I think this bishop is a bad bishop since it's running into its own pawns and doesn't really have a lot of scope to do stuff around here, whereas I think this knight is a good knight. So taking here is not something that I would choose to do, and especially if you can actually start attacking, like basically like keep this bishop as a glorified pawn. But f6, e takes f6, g takes f6 is an interesting point again here. I don't like this much just because it allows, although now white has double isolated pawns and an isolated pawn, but I don't like this enough because it somehow gives white some more space to play and open this rook up. Although this rook is almost pretty useless since it's like hemmed in by its own pieces and the pawns by black. So something like bishop c7, and this rook is free to move, and probably also go for a couple of exchanges, and then this rook can infiltrate, the other rook can infiltrate towards the 7th rank, and I don't see a way to defend this h-pawn. Black after played king d3, king f7, stopping any ideas of this even after exchanges. So knight a2 was played, bishop d6, and f4 has been played. White is somehow trying to make space for this rook, and I think bishop c7, rook a g8 might be an idea. Let's see what's going on in the other game. Okay, so not a lot has happened since then. Bishop g2, c5, knight here, bishop g4, castles kingside and h5. The idea again being is to play h4 and ask the kingside safety questions to white. I think an idea might be just to play h4, king h2 and bishop h3. Since this knight is pinned, there's not a lot of hope, but queen e1 can also be played. h3 has been played instead of h4. The bishop probably has to retreat. Taking here, I would not recommend, since it's an attacking piece. It was attacking an important kingside pawn. So something like bishop d6, but then it runs into knight f4. So maybe bishop d7, or even exchanging at this point. Nothing seems out of hand right now. Let's go back to that interesting endgame. So after f4, rook a b8 was played, knight c1, defending this pawn, also making room for this rook to come back out. But since the knight and the rook, and both the rooks will be on the first rank, this knight seems fairly out of place. This bishop seems great, running, like, actually, like, taking away so many squares away from white pieces, and this knight seems a monster piece, which is just like making this bishop, as I've said before, a glorified pawn. The valuation seems to be pretty even, is what the engine thought for him before, but I think the material is equal, but there are definitely weaknesses on white's side, which are these double isolated pawns, and then this isolated pawn, and these pieces out of position. So if you start seeing the weaknesses, almost everything is out of place. Let's look at for black. So what weaknesses do we have? I think this one is definitely weak, but I see no way to attack it, because to attack it, you have to get to this file, and this knight basically takes away both the important squares for the rook to reach, and this pawn takes away any other options that this rook wanted to take. So it's one of these moves that the rook has to take, and all these, hold on, so all of these are taken back. And after bishop c7, an interesting move. I think black will go back and try to exchange the rooks and be really happy with having a full open file to themselves. Let's go back to this and see what has. And after bishop d3, a4 has been played. I guess an interesting idea. I do not see why a4 is a move. Let's see if the engine actually thinks a4 is a move. The engine actually finds f4 or c3 as a move. The a4 is still on the list, which is really interesting. I do not see what a4 does. Maybe stopping b5 is the idea. But I would not, in a million years, would have thought of a4. I would have probably thought of knight, not the knight, but probably f4 or c3 would have been my choices. a4 definitely not, but that is interesting. So a4 has been played. And here again, a dubious decision, I think, trying to play rook a3, a rook defending a pawn and trying to free up this knight to move up. But again, this knight, like, so my vision for the knight needs to be something, right? So the knight needs to get to like one of these squares. So if the knight reaches c5, miraculously somehow, the knight is a very, very strong piece. A way to do this would probably be king e2, knight d3, and then putting the knight there. So this defending the pawn might be justified. But you have to find this. You have to really get the knight to a place where it actually can start attacking other pieces, pawns, and be really safe. So it does control really nice squares in the black territory if the knight actually reaches c5. White also needs to sort out what to do with this glorified pawn, how to defend this d4 if the bishop ever moves. And after rook b5, we know we're expecting rook there. I think king c3 can be played. So king c3, knight d3, knight c5. Still an option. Again, I think it's very strong because you can always play this, like taking away two more squares, and if the rook moves up, you can somehow try a repetition But there's definitely something to be gained here. It's definitely not lost at this position. It's a little bad. After king c3, the Indian doesn't like it. So I don't know what the top line was here. So bishop d2 was a line. Basically a tactical shot. That if you move, I take here. Not with this actually. You can't take unless you take here. Then I take here, I think. But anyway, so coming back to the position, king c3 and rook ab8 has been played, and I think now knight d3 is what we would see on the board. Some developments have been made, and after a4, queen d7 was played, king h3 defending king h2 defending the h3 pawn. h4, g4, takes, and king h3 has been played. I think the camera just stopped working. I need to probably take a look, and we'll be back. Till then, enjoy this game. Well, I did forget to plug in my camera to charge, but we should not lose perspective of this really nice, interesting game. So after h4, queen takes g4, bishop h3, queen h5, knight g1, exchanging or asking to exchange the queens. The queen exchange is not off the board. I think that is this just chance to take. And after rook takes h5, you can play knight c4, plonking the knight on a very smooth square, and even then you can actually start asking questions to the pawn on e5. And then also with knight f3, you're also threatening to take the pawn on g5. But after f6, which defends both the weaknesses, bishop f5 might be an idea. Again, cheap tricks, but bishop f5 is an idea to play this. This game is already finished, so let's take a look at how it ended. So knight d3 was played, bishop d6. And after rook a4, rook takes b3, bishop d2, black resigned. The evaluation was probably like -2, -3. -2, yeah. So -2, but again, the position is very, very hopeless because there's almost nothing. Black has a protected passer, which black will soon grab after this knight moves. There's immense pressure on this b2 pawn. This rook is out of place. Knight takes d4 will be incoming really shortly. Almost everything seems defended for the time being, but once black starts like attacking and mobilizing its pieces, it's game. So let's get back to this. And after very interestingly bishop f5, that cheap trick king e7 has been played. The question then is, what exactly does white play here? So bishop d2 was played after king e7, trying to play b4, takes and takes, and giving it a check, exchanging off one more piece. So here, I think white has a piece for 2 pawns. Let's do a quick material count. That's 6 pawns instead of 8. But white has 3 minor pieces, actually 4 minor pieces instead of 3. So a point of advantage, as you can see here. And then 2 rooks on each side and a king. So the question then becomes, can black somehow snag a pawn and be like, I have 3 pawns for a piece and I'm okay? And this just loses a rook directly. And I assume that that's game. That's game. That is simply lost. There's no coming back from losing a rook. Yep. After knight g4, you might try rook h6. So what happens to rook h6? Bishop f5. And this knight has nowhere to go. That probably will mean 2 pieces for 3 pawns. That should be good enough. Let's see if my camera's back charged and back up so that we can actually show you some video. Right, so apologies for the interruption. Let's get back to this where we left you with bishop f5, knight takes f2, rook takes f2, knight c6, knight f3, knight b4, bishop takes b4, c takes b4, knight f d2, and the question now is, how does white finish off this game? Having 2 pieces for 3 pawns, black yet has retained all the 8 pawns. These knights are almost stepping on each other's toes, and this bishop. So the only problem for white is that these knights are stepping on each other's toes. they need to give squares to each other, and then also that this bishop is running into its own pawns. So if this was a black bishop, I think it would be much better, because then you're running, or you're like attacking opponent pawns, and there might be tactical shots. But this, okay, so at least one of the knights gets a nice square to sit and be really happy. And then I think a5 is imminent. Just keeping this weakness here forever. And then you can also play something like rook a4, very weirdly, but that should seem to work. So a5, I think, is an idea if black doesn't play b6 right away. b6 is not possible, right? Because knight takes. So a5, I think, is a definite idea. Yes, and now rook a4 coming in very easily. Also, the stream is at 5 minutes delay. So, and also I just know how Clint thinks, so it's easier to guess the moves. And there's no and also we're at different places. Anyway, so it's just easier to guess, and it makes way more sense to play a5 to keep this weakness here. Rook a4, just picking up this pawn, a very weak b4 pawn, and then once this is gone, c3 is a definite idea. And then I think I would also like to play knight d2 again, and put my knight on c4 once I've definitely cleaned up this pawn. So the other game has already ended. We'll be going on to the last round really quickly. And here there's almost no way to defend the pawn. It seems to be really lost on b4, and that would be 4 points in material for white. And the more pawns get off the board, the more these knights will come into play, and things will start getting trickier. I mean, you can almost see this mating net. So this bishop takes away so many squares from the king, and this knight also covers or captures a ton. And this is a nice thing. So if you trying to learn how to checkmate with bishop and knight, you see that the bishop and the knight on same squares basically build a wedge around the king. So right here is what the bishop holds, and this is what the knight holds. And suddenly the king can never leave this whole wedge of squares, and you just have to make it smaller, one piece at a time. So this is a really nice. So remove all the pieces from the board in your mind, and just assume that these 3 pieces are the only things on the board. Let's say these 4. And you can see that the king can never leave this weird little area unless he tries from here, and this is where this king comes into place. So if white king gets here and white king holds this square, the king can never leave these squares. Anyway, next little concept. Rook a4 has been played as predicted. Very soon this pawn will drop with the knight. The knight probably will go back, and this rook becomes active after this. Maybe another rook exchange, major piece exchange again, possible. Also knight d2, knight c4 is an idea. Putting the knight somewhere here. Oh, not this one actually. I would like to put this knight here. So something like this. After this has been exchanged. And this rook. And then somehow also rerouting this rook. So that can be possible. Interesting choice of move. g4 has been played. Bishop takes g4. Rook takes g4. I would have not predicted rook takes g4. But after king takes g4, are there ideas? So I can just play rook h2. And I see nothing. Yep, rook h2, and there's nothing that black can do. I mean, if you give check, I just take back with the king, and I'm happy. Like there's no play whatsoever. And even better is this: rook takes f6, rook takes f6, and if you take back, even if you try to push, I have rook a1 defending last minute. So do you take back or do you not, is the question. And if you do, I still have rook a1, cleaning this h2 pawn up after rook h1, rook h2. And in the process, I also got both the rooks off the board. One extra piece, an extra rook. So this king will take the knight, obviously. An extra rook, and probably an extra pawn also. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3 into 5. So this pawn is definitely lost. So an extra pawn and an extra rook. White's cruising. It's cruising +6. +6. +6, +6 on the board. All that 7-point material +6 is how Stockfish would evaluate it. Anything more than that is anything more than +2 is actually just a clear win. Rook h1, rook h2, easy moves. White here, not a lot to see. And in fact, I think if White is feeling adventurous, White can also go something like this, just taking even the last piece off the board. And then there's no way to defend this e5 pawn, losing one more pawn in the process, and then you'll also take this. So it's worth the trade anyway. Simplifying things really quickly. Well, Black just resigns. It's no way to come back from this. Let's look at the standings really quickly. We have Clint and Living for Christ, which is Josh Pruitt at the top with 2 points each. Lucas and Troy with 1 point each. And Craig with a point because he gets a buy in the last game. Last games have started. Lucas plays Ektroy. The opening is e4. Lucas the God with white. Zachariah with black. e4, c5, Sicilian on the board, guys. And the other game, Josh is white. Clint is black. Knight f3, c5. G3 on the board. G3 after a think of 9 seconds. Took some time. 9 seconds to move. Played G3. So trying to take Clint out of his opening prep is what I think trying to do. But again, Clint responds very similarly with G6, Bishop G2, Bishop G7, and C4. Almost symmetric. If we see Knight F6, it would be symmetric. Evaluation probably at this point 0. Let's go back. See a couple of moves have been played. E4, C5, Knight F3, D6, and I think we're going the knight off route with F3. This has been like this F3 move has come more into play very recently. In fact, not very recently. It has been over a year or so. So I think this came into my knowledge when Alireza played this against Hikaru, the very long theoretical draw that they played, and he sacrifices. No, it doesn't sacrifice, but leads a huge kingside attack after playing something like Bishop C4, Bishop D3, Queen D. Bishop C4, Bishop D3, Queen D2, Castle kingside, and then he goes G4, H4. So I think that is from what I remember from the previous candidates. This another candidate's coming up soon. But F3 is a line right now, so it's very widely being played. E6 has been played. In fact, I have played this multiple times against Zachariah. Bishop E7, Queen D2, and as I've said already, B5, and then you will see G4, H4, opposited castling, which means this is going to be a bloodbath. We have a game on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go back to this. This game has a really slow opening pace. After Bishop G2, Bishop G7, C4 was played, Knight C6 was played, and E3 was played. And I think of a minute here for E6. Interesting choice of openings, and it makes sense because these two players are actually playing for money right now. The winner gets $30 and also the right to choose their opponent for the next round of the tournament, which is over the board chess. So we will be bringing you more chess somewhere in the next month, where all these the 4 players, the top 4, will actually try to fight this out amongst themselves. Here at Arkansas State University, presented to you by Scarlet Chess Club. It will be over the board system where you will have an upper and a lower bracket. So if you lose, it's not a flat semifinals. So if you lose, you actually are pushed into the lower bracket where you will play the other person. I think that is how we're intending to do it. But let's see. Let's get back to the game after e6. So e3, e6 was played. Knight c3, knight g e7, castle kingside, and both the players amiably castling on the same side, unlike the other game. And now we'll play for the control of the center and some sort of queenside advances. Going back to the first game, this game has gone beyond crazy in a couple of moments. So after castle kingside, b5, g4, king h8, h4, b4, knight e2, bishop b7. The move's not coming fast enough. g5, knight takes e4, f takes e4, bishop takes e4, h4, losing a rook, g6, and bishop f6. Similarly, if the idea of black is that if you take on h7, I just use a pawn as pawn shield, but g takes f7, rook takes f7, knight takes e6, queen e5, queen takes d6. This game is purely crazy, purely crazy. There's almost everything's hanging. So there's this rook's hanging, this queen has no defenders, this bishop's hanging, there's a double attack here, but the queen cannot take. You need to somehow support this once the queen moves, but the queen cannot move here because of this bishop. So the queen has to move somewhere where it can attack the king, but also this pawn was hanging. So king b1 has been played. There's so much going on. This b2 is under threat, if not definitely lost. There's this idea of playing queen e5, exchanging the queen directly. White seems to be. Let's start from the start itself. Let's look at the material imbalances first. So we have 4 pawns on each side. Queen is not a pawn. 4 pawns on each side and queen e5 on the board. 1 queen and 1 major piece. So 4 major pieces instead of 3. So black is basically an exchange up, and after knight here. What does black play? We'll say the valuation is around minus 1.8, which is around where we are at. Minus 1.84 is where the evaluation is. It seems like so because the black, yes, is an exchange up, but it's not a clean exchange. White has some sort of activity, as you see, this rook and this bishop. They both are on the edge of the board and seem a little bit out of place. These rooks are not connected as of yet. Once they connect and this bishop regains its place back, I think it's going to be much easier for. So bishop c6, I think the only move, because this is being attacked and this is being double attacked. So let me just draw the arrows. There are the 2 threats. The one move that thwarts both of the threats is bishop c6, and black chooses to play bishop b2. Bishop takes b2 and lose piece. No, but not. So this knight is still there. But now the evaluation should actually swing in favor of white, because a piece was lost in the process, and now you have 2 pieces for a rook, and now you have to and a pawn. So now you have to basically show what exactly can these 2 rooks combined together do. Albeit there's no back rank threats because the rook stays on the back rank. The bishop can definitely hold this. That is just losing a piece straightforward. Crazy games again. With 17 minutes on the clock, I think the players should pretty much slow down. This is an end game. You have time. Knights are tricky. There's still chances of swindles here because the knights can be very tricky. Exchanging the rooks is just signing the papers of defeat. And here I think rook d7 or rook d8. I would like rook d7 better. I think rook d7 is just a simple win. Pinning the knight, going rook f6 or rook d8 after this, and nothing stops you from taking this knight from here, and black has a comfortable win from here. So let's go back. Let's actually see this. Very level-headed game actually. So after both the players castle, the d4, d6 was played, a3 and a6 was played, and rook b1. Both the players actually taking their time and slowly inching towards attacks. Josh is definitely planning b4. What exactly can black do to stop it, or change the dynamic of the game? It looks like white is dictating the tone of the battle. After white gets d4 has a clear space advantage, a good all developed pieces. The bishop will come soon to d2 or b2, and in fact go to b2 and sit on a1 and act as this laser, and then this rook goes to e1. White is cruising, whereas this bishop seems a little stuck, just like a French bishop, between its own pawns. These knights are still looking for better squares, or the knight f5 is probably, or will be met with something like this, e4. So king safety is okay, but it's the other dynamics of this position which make this position interesting. This game should have ended as it did. So let's look at how black closed it out after rook d8. Knight c4 takes, losing a pawn in the process with the exchange of major pieces. Rook h1, there's no way to save the h5 pawn. 3 extra pawns and an exchange. Black cruises to victory. This game is done and dusted. Queen c7 being played, making space. I think bishop, still I would still think b5 or b6 is a move, because bishop b7 and then putting both the rooks here. I would not go bishop e7 because I do not like what the bishop does on e7. It doesn't even go anywhere, so I do not understand if bishop d7 is actually played. I would still think b6 or b5, and then bishop b7 is an idea. Also, white has simple moves to be played, which is a very simple plan. Basically, put the queen on one of these squares, put the bishop on this really nice diagonal, play for take control of the center, take control of all the space that you have, and centralize your rooks and get ready for an attack. So very shortly after white does all of this, we should see h4, h5 coming black's way and asking the question, yes, I have a space advantage, I have a safe king, and all my pieces are developed. I'm attacking your king, now what? The only game left, this is probably the last game. This also decides who gets the top spot and the rights to choosing their opponent for the over the board part of the or the third part of the Scarlet Chess Super League. Definitely just interesting positions here. White's thinking 12 minutes on the clock for white, around 9 minutes for black. I think white is cruising. If I had to guess the evaluation here, I would probably say somewhere around plus 0.4. Maybe even higher, 0.6. Okay, so 0.4 again. 0.4 seems nice again, because again, the space advantage and this bishop running into its own pawns is good enough to guess it's 0.4. Both the structures are almost similar, no pawns being exchanged. Well, it seems like this bishop is having the same fate, but the difference is that after b4 there is a lot of dynamic shift here, and this bishop can go to b2 and suddenly seize the other bishop, whereas after b6 and bishop b7, this knight doesn't seem to have squares to move, whereas this knight can always move here. So this knight has its own friend or its twin stepping on its toes. So there's not a lot of spaces for this knight to move, and if this knight goes to like somewhere like d8, even more death for this knight, because there's not a lot of squares for this knight to move. Again, the knight to b8 and f6 might be a better choice. This was a classical game. I would actually expect b6, bishop b7, and then knight b8, I think at some point. Or some sort of break in the center otherwise. While I spent a couple of minutes here, black spent around 3 minutes thinking about queen c7. And here I think a few more games. I would suggest a few more minutes, probably like a couple more minutes would be played. Another 3.5 minute think for white. White played knight e2. Let's look at what was the top move here. Knight e2. The engine doesn't like it a lot. So the moves that the engine recommends here is d takes c5 or rook e1. And even b4 seems to be nice. And I think b4 is a very simple move to be played. B4 is just because you're gaining space, it does two things basically. Gains space for you, attacks this, and opens a luft for your bishop to basically be put on d2, b2. And then here the line that engine wants us to play is d takes c5, d takes c5, queen c2, b6, b4, c takes b4, a takes b4, and bishop b7. The knight e4, which is interesting. I would have gone bishop b2. So I would have gone bishop b2, but okay, knight e4 is another idea. All right, knight e2 has been played, and this seems to have been a mistake. The only way to punish this mistake, there's actually a couple of ways to punish this mistake, but the two ways are b5 and e5. Let's see if black can actually find these. But very difficult at this point. I think b6 or b5, since because black has been in the in the idea or in the mindset to equalize because of the space deficit. B6 would have been idea, so b5 was much easier to be found than e5. And after a minute and 43 seconds, so quarter to 2 minutes, think b5 has been played, and now the best move to respond is b4. But let's turn off the evaluation and engine lines. Let's think as humanly as possible. So if you take, I take, you actually give me or my rook somewhat of a space here. You also give me this bishop b7 thingy. So b4, as the engine suggested, there's definitely this possibility to be played. b4 is definitely an idea. Let's see. b3 has been played. So black definitely now has the space advantage that white somewhere around 2 moves ago was bragging about. We do really see this bishop now come into life with bishop b7. I think it should be an easy move. But b3 basically just is preparing if b takes c4, b takes c4, and white gets the open rook. A rook on the open file already, so there's no hurry to actually take, or no need, in fact, even. So bishop b7 seems pretty calm move to be played, and pretty obvious. Now the question becomes, what does white play here? So is bishop b2 a move? Are we running into ideas of e5 even then? Or is there still an idea of takes, and you can play queen c2 and put a rook here? Or play bishop b2 first, bishop b2, queen c2, and rook here after you take. And then exchange here, maybe. That is an idea. But we'll have to see. Excuse me. Okay, so we see d takes c5, excuse me, d takes c5, d takes c5, c takes b5, and if a takes b5, what does white really want to play here? The good thing is that both the players are in 1.5 minutes, within 1.5 minutes of each other. After a takes b5, queen c2 has been played. Attacking the c5 pawn. Let's look at the lines here. b4 is an idea. b4, very difficult to find, because what if b4? Oh yeah, b4, because you're double attacking this pawn. And if you take back, I take back, I think, and I'm happy. I'm not sure. Yeah, because then it's defended. Excuse me. So b5 is an idea. Okay, maybe possible, but also the tactical idea is if you take, I can't take back yet because the queen takes. So there has to be something else that you can do. What happens with b4 again? Let's actually take this to analysis board. Can I take it to analysis board? I don't know. Let's try. Okay. c2. And if here, what's happening? Bishop a6, threatening this. Yeah, seems like a. Okay, then it seems like a nice tactical idea. And you have to play this knight f4 because this is pinned. And then you have to find rook fc8. If takes, it takes d4. Knight takes d4 has to be played. Queen d8. So you can take here, but you have to play queen d8 or queen d7. Yes, because there's this too. So there's a ton of tactical ideas. I think this is getting messy. I don't assume b5 is the move that is going to be played. I think so b4 probably not going to be played. We'll see something like either knight e5 or rook fc8. Rook fc8. Interesting. There's also knight d5. But I think knight e5 is the most likely move to be played. Yep, knight e5. And maybe knight takes e5 is an idea. Both the players actually taking their time, and this was a good quarter to 3 minute thing from black. Also, now 3.5 minutes away, like 3.5 minutes down from white. So let's see if white plays this really quickly and actually capitalizes on the time difference and makes it more complex, or white actually tries to make it like give the time back. White plays really quickly with 8 minutes on the clock after knight takes e5, bishop takes g2, and king takes g2 should come soon. There should be no tactics lurking around here. And after king takes g2, bishop takes, or queen takes, in fact, any of those. e5 should be okay. And a draw was actually offered, which was declined as black feels they have a better position. I think it's pretty even. It's just that psychological advantage is with black right now after declining a draw, because he thinks he has an advantage and white thinks he has no initiative to play for. But after king takes g2, what exactly does black have, or how exactly what does black intend to win this game? What plans does it have uh, to put an attack out? And let's look at what the top lines that white can play here. So king takes g2 seems the only way. Knight takes g6 is an idea. Then bishop takes f. Knight takes e7, king takes g2. And now bishop takes e5 or queen takes e5. Both of them actually work. Keep the advantage in black's favor. Bishop takes e5 though a little bit better. But again, this question still lies: what elaborate plan does black have to win the game? Time's very comparable now with both the players at around 4 minutes 30 seconds. White is definitely not lost. White is maybe has lost a little potential to win, but like there's still a lot to get that from. And after this move, it seems like rook f8 is what the engine likes. This game is probably going to go down right down to the wire. Rook f8 has been played. Rook f8 on the board. Hello, Troy. How are you doing? Okay, c8. Good swindle at the end, right? Like the game that you played, you almost lost a piece, and then he lost a piece. Couple of blunders, both sides, but he came out victorious at the end. And white going into time deficit for the first time, I think, since the game has started. And after king g1, black needs to find a plan to capitalize from this. Queen c6 has been played. Black's trying to still keep the time advantage and start putting pressure, although the time difference is only 15 seconds, but the lower the times drop, it becomes a little more difficult. Although there's a plus 10-second increment each move, the players are definitely taking a little bit too long, as you can see. So if you actually rotate this, 90 degrees, this would look like a New York skyline with these long skyscrapers, which basically show a lot of time being spent in the last few moves. The opening was relatively quick, and so probably after move 8, they've been spending consistent amount of times, which is around a minute or so per move, not taking a lot of time for the exchanges. This is a very interesting insight chess.com actually allows you to watch, which is the forced moves pretty much, and the moves that are exchanges were played really quickly, but the moves then that require more strategic advantages or advances take some time. So anyway, taking a look at after king g2, bishop e5, knight c3, rook fc8, king g1, queen c6, bishop b2, and bishop g7, rook fd1. Seems like there were a couple of fluctuations in the evaluation, but black seems to still have that comfortable edge of what do you call it? A comfortable advantage of 0.6. There's not gonna keep the account and it was not the final. Yeah, but the final is actually going to be over the board, so his account really doesn't really like matter at this point. Yep, Clint Barnes accounts so much at this point. I think the joke is that chess.com actually has a different server for just Clint's accounts. Anyway, we have rook d1 being played. So rook fd1 being played, and well, let's look at it from black's perspective. So what if I was black? What am I trying to do here? I know that I have a spatial advantage, somewhat. I know this king is pretty weak. My king is strong enough, but my knight cannot penetrate this king's safety because of the dark squares. To go into light squares, I need to be on the dark squares. One way is to get this knight to one of these squares to jump in. Another thing that I can do is probably put the queen on f3 again and see if I can start pushing this. In fact, I can push two moves. Excuse me, push pawn 2 squares instead of 1 at the first time the pawn moves. So I can always play queen f3, h4, h5. One idea. I can move this knight here and I can bring this knight in. The queen though suddenly defends everything yet. But once, let's say, the queen reroutes itself, so there's again, we're trying to just find potential ideas. What can black do here? Black is down to 1 minute and 20 seconds, taking almost 3 minutes for this thing. Excuse me. And playing c4. The Indian wanted black to play b4. c4 is the second best move. So not that far off halves the advantage, but the advantage being 0.7, not that much. So 0.3 being lost is on a 2000 rated player. It's not really that much of a difference. And here rook dc1 has to be played. Seems very counterintuitive since you just moved in the previous move. You moved the rook to d1 already. With this rook dc1 seems a little off. Excuse me. And rook bc1 gives the advantage right back to black. So there are a couple of ideas that are being present again, and rook bc1 again. Since rook dc1 was counterintuitive, rook bc1 has been played. H5 seems to be an idea, and as we just discussed previously, that queen on f3 will be very, very strong. White has to respond with h4 or b takes c4. I think those are the only two moves. Maybe queen e2 to keep equilibrium. Queen e2 is a move that stops queen f3 from coming in. You give a couple of moves to black, and black comes in with queen f3, knight jumping in. You have f4, you have g5 coming in. Sorry, f5, g5 coming in. Again, not a lot of things happening here very quickly yet. Also, this is probably a bad move because you can take back and then you can exchange off this bishop, and I think the advantage is completely gone. Also here knight takes b5, losing a pawn is an interesting thing. So let's see if white notices the pawn that's lost. And not all is lost for white here, black here. Knight f5 or c takes b3 is a move. This outside passer, the engine doesn't seem to really like it. And even then, I think there's more to identify from here as to where does this knight sit. Does this knight actually do any damage if it sits or plonks itself on d6 with the support of this rook? But first you have to capture this. So what's the idea? You have to find so rook takes c1 is definitely one thing. Do you want to keep the rooks? Is that possible? And rook takes c1. If it's rook takes c1, I think knight f5 still is what the engine likes. Exchanges, I think, might be a little bad because now suddenly the queen looks and sees the h8 and the g7 squares. Nothing happens right away, but I think knights are tricky and they can definitely cause some sort of problem. If this knight somehow reaches this square or this square, no, this square actually, but if the knight somehow reaches this square, which would still take it a couple of moves to reach. Knight f5, top engine move found. Bishop takes g7 only move. Otherwise, there's something else happening or waiting to happen. Bishop takes g7 played. Knight takes g3 is the only move. Knight takes g3 only move to keep track with less than a minute remaining. Very interesting. Imagine these two players who wins this takes 30 bucks and also gets the right to choose their opponent. Knight takes g3 only move. Yeah, I wanted to kind of say that, but then I realized that it would still reach you a little late, that the stream is on a 5-minute delay. And I didn't want to open Discord since I was not sure which window of monitor it opens to. I didn't want to obscure the view of the thing. But knight takes g3 found with 42 seconds of think. Knight takes g3 has been found. F takes g3, queen takes g3 is a perpetual check, and I think there's no way for the king to actually get away. And you are threatening knight e2 check at some point, if not taken, I think. I'm not sure, but this seems to be fizzling out into a draw. We'll see if this seems to be like equal on both the tie breaks and stuff. We'll see what do we have for the rules, but that will be a little bit later. Let's see. F takes g3, I think only move. Queen takes g3, king f1, and maybe a perpetual somewhere, not allowing the king to leave. We'll see. There's still at least a couple of minutes on the clock for like combined. Pre-moving here, and king takes g7 is the only drawing move here. King takes g7, the only drawing move. Queen b2 check, e5 has to be played. So there's a tons of draws, I think, coming from both the sides now. The draw is declined. It's a complex position. White has a pawn. I'm sorry, white has a knight for a pawn, but there's definitely like you have to still find these difficult moves. So rook d8 or rook b8 are the only moves that draw. Rook d8, a little difficult. Rook d8 I think is still maybe easier to find. Rook b8 probably a little difficult. And rook d8 found, yes. And with queen e2 seems to be a blunder. With queen f3 check. And this rook sliding into d1. Okay. And then now queen h1 check is an idea. Queen h1. Hold on. Let's close this. So queen h1 check is an idea. Queen h1, king goes here. 36 seconds. So we have to kind of think about it in that way. and you have to find the winning move. What's the winning move? What wins? Okay, no. Queen d5. Queen d5 is the winning move. Oh, because you attack here. Oh god. You have to find queen d5. And he finds it. He finds it. Queen d5 has been found. And now you're threatening this mate. No, it's not mate. King goes here. But there's threats everywhere. So you're threatening to take this. Where does the knight go? After this, queen c4 check. King f3, queen g4. It's a little tricky. It's a little tricky to see queen c4 with 30 seconds on the clock. Queen c4 check is mate in 2. There's nothing you can do to defend. This rook cuts the king off. Sorry, this rook cuts the king off. This queen c4 check takes the last escaping square f1 away. You have to go king f3, and queen g4 just obliterates the king, checkmates the king right in the center of the board. With almost no squares to go, actually. No, almost actually. This queen takes everything away from this king. Queen f3, king g4. Clint takes this back in style with such an amazing, crazy game that started with an equal position, no exchanges whatsoever. White made a slight mistake. Black found a few only moves that were required, and a beautiful high-level game to end this tournament. King f3 only move. There's nothing else to do. King f3, queen g4, checkmate. Forced, very forced. Just a little sad for how this game ended. This was a definite draw. Queen e1, I think, ended any chances it had for white at that point. I think rook d2 was the only move. Very, very close games. We see here a thrilling, exciting end to a 3-round Swiss tournament. We should be closing out this game quick. Black resigns, and Clint takes it with 3-on-3. Such beautiful game. We have our top 4 right here. A beautiful, and we see respect between the players. But the players ending this out with good sporting spirit between each other. We have our top 3. Clint, how it's on the tip of my tongue. But we have Clint and the rest of the 2 players. I think this is it from today. And this marks the end. I would actually like to do a game review of this if I can. Let's quickly see if we can quickly do a game review of this one. Gonna take into a classroom. And is there an option for game review? I'm not sure, but let's see if it's possible. We will probably post a couple of these onto our YouTube. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Bye bye.